Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I want to chat about what can and can't happen at maintenance calories. Just because I feel like there's been a lot of, again, unrealistic expectations of what can't happen and what can, right? I think it really goes both ways. So we're going to dive into that today. But first, if you haven't and you're interested in this, go check out my free body recomp checklist. And within that checklist, I go over what body recomp is, what it isn't, some misconceptions, different types of body recomp, why it's important to focus on your body composition, and then 10 things that you need to see a body recomp. And so again, the link to that is in the show notes and it's completely free. So make sure you go and check that out. All right. So let's dive into what can and can't happen at maintenance calories. So again, inside the performance recomp method, which is really my signature program and what I work on with clients, and it's just my system and method that I've created over time, we focus on building muscle, improving metabolic health, and enhancing performance in and out of the gym, okay? And so because of that, that's why we use maintenance calories strategically throughout the year. It's going to help you train harder, recover faster, and drive real body composition change without burning out. And so let's talk about what can and cannot happen here. And again, at the end of this episode, you should have a better idea of when you can use these and what you can actually expect, and again, what you can't expect. So let's talk about first what can happen at maintenance calories. So I guess before I dive into that, what is considered maintenance calories? To me, it's where you're eating enough and you're not really seeing your body weight trend up or down consistently. And what I mean by that is, okay, maybe over a span of 6 to 12 months, you'll see it trend upwards of a few pounds, right? Again, maybe you're just going to see that slow trend, but we're not having this like week to week average where we're seeing it trend in any one direction. Okay. So it's you eating enough and maybe you're dipping into a small surplus every once in a while, but really we're just not seeing any clear trends week over week. Right. And so what can happen? And so that's what maintenance calories is, right? It's where you're bringing in enough food to match the needs to basically run your body. And again, because of that, it's going to put us there's going to be some distinct things that can happen here when you match your energy, when your energy balance is really matched with each other. Again, it's not going to be this perfect, hey, you expend 2,344 calories and you're bringing in 2,344 calories. It probably works a little bit on a spectrum, and it's just not an exact science. And so that's why I use body weight within other metrics as well too, because we don't just want to look at body weight, but body weight can tell us where things are trending and what energy balance you're in over time. And so that's why we use the scale weight for that there. So let's talk about what can happen here. You can build muscle, especially if you're training with intent and consistently hitting protein. So a lot of people think that you can't build muscle at your maintenance calories. And again, that's like, now, could you build a little bit more in a smaller surplus where you're seeing your scale weight trend up? Potentially. I would argue that's not always going to be the case, but in most, like if you're somebody who already has a good amount of muscle and you want to continue to build more and more muscle and you're on the leaner side, you're going to need to be in at least a small surplus to continue to build more muscle. But the problem is most people are not there. And so a lot of people would benefit a lot from just being at their maintenance calories to build muscle. And again, what a lot of people don't understand is your current body composition is super important. So I feel like a lot of people will just be like, see, this study says you need to be in a surplus, or other people are like, hey, I just think if you really want to build muscle, you need to be in a surplus and you need to gain some weight. And again, like I said, you may see weight gain over an extended period of time truly being at your maintenance calories, especially if we are really focusing on our inputs here and driving muscle growth and things like that. But the problem is a lot of people, so women in particular, and just everyone in general, like they're at a body fat percentage that they don't need to push more weight gain to build muscle, right? I just have seen this happen too many times where people do that. And then now they have a worse physique because they heard, oh, hey, you want to build muscle, you need to be in a surplus, right? And so then just push their weight past where they need to go. And now they gain more body fat than they need. And then you have to spend half of your fat loss phase dieting off the body fat that you didn't need to gain. So I think when we look at most people, not everyone's trying to be a massive bodybuilder and have the most amount of muscle possible. Now, I still think you need really push to build more muscle. People underestimate how much they do need to push to build more muscle, but I don't think it needs to be the point to where you need to gain 10 plus pounds to do that. Again, if you're coming off of a fat loss diet, you may see your scale weight come up a little bit and things are going to balance out. And then combine that with, hey, over 6 to 12 months, you may see your body weight come up a little bit. That may end up looking like 5 to 10 pounds there. But again, if we're nailing our inputs, it's not going to be any really noticeable amount of fat gain that you're going to have. And saying that, in not all situations does that have to happen? Okay. But if you're super lean, your scale weight is going to have to come up at some point, at least a little bit there. Right. And so I bring this up because just women in particular, like women have to have a little bit more body fat for just basic bodily functions. And so they already have that stored energy on their body that they don't need. That's a surplus that they already have on their body. And again, this is the body fat that you need, right? And so that's where most women are going to fall. Now, there's always going to be some women that are super lean and they would benefit from, again, likely being in a small surplus. But most people, women in particular, are not going to need to gain really a bunch of weight to build muscle because they have higher levels of body fat. And then men, again, if you're under, say, 12%, like you're probably going to have to gain some weight to build some muscle. You could get away with not, but your inputs really need to be dialed in. You really need to have everything dialed in, and you may be able to build some muscle. But I would still say for you, it would be a little bit slower if you just put on a little bit of body fat and gained a little bit. But if you're 15 to 20% or higher, which again, a lot of people are, people don't realize that, but a lot of people are above 15 to 20% body fat, you really don't need a surplus. And if you do need a surplus, it would be for a very short time, and then we would go to your maintenance. Okay. So with all this being said, you can build muscle at maintenance, but the key being you need to be training with intent. We need to have the right stimulus in our training. We can't just be willy-nillying our training. We need to have an intent with our training. We need to have a game plan. We need to be pushing things, and we need to be hitting our protein. Okay. You have to hit protein. And those are only a few things. Like we also need to be like, we could dial in our meal timing. We need to be having a nice balance of macros. We need to be getting enough micros in, enough high quality foods, sleep, overall stress load on your body. We need to manage. And so again, if you nail those things, a lot of people have a lot of runway to build muscle at maintenance calories. As I said, really the only caveats to this is going to be if you're sub 8 to 12% from a male perspective and you already have a good amount of muscle, then you unfortunately maintenance keeping your body weight the same likely is not going to drive as much muscle growth as you would if you intentionally gained a little bit of body fat. And then women, if you're under 18 to 22% body fat, same kind of concept there. But in general, women have a little bit more runway because of the fact that they carry more levels of body fat, essential levels of body fat. But the key being our inputs need to be dialed in, as people overlook that. They think too much about the energy balancer and they don't worry about their inputs. The only thing that they worry about is how many calories they're consuming and where their scale weight's going. And that's all they focus on when we need other things to be dialed in. So that's the first thing that we can do at maintenance is we can build muscle, which is awesome. You don't need that surplus that people talk about unless there is specific conditions, then you may, but most people don't. All right. Next, we can optimize our metabolism by fueling our body instead of underfeeding it. So I, a couple weeks ago, talked about, hey, here's how you can optimize your metabolism. And one of them being like, hey, if you're always in a deficit and you're always trying to push fat loss and you're always eating low calorie and you've never tried to eat at maintenance, you probably have a artificially low maintenance intake. Your maintenance calories are lower because your body's adapted to that. Now it can adapt back up, which is awesome, but we're not going to be optimizing our metabolism when we are in a deficit and when we're on the lean, like super lean, right? Again, we're talking sub 15, 18% for women, sub 5 to 8% for men there, right? You're not going to be maximizing your metabolism there. And same thing. And so we can optimize it. So what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to feel your best. Your body's going to be more likely to build muscle. And then when you go back to fat loss dieting, you should have a more effective and efficient fat loss. When we're optimizing our metabolism, our thyroid levels get back to some normalcy there, right? So everything in the body just runs more smoothly as well too. So that's awesome, right? That's a great thing there. With that, our hormones are balanced at this point, especially if we're doing we have the right inputs on top of being at your maintenance calories, right? So basically your metabolism and everything gets dialed in at this point. And again, that's a great spot to be in. You're going to feel better. You're going to perform better. You're going to look better, all these things there. And if we're just constantly in a energy deficit or trying to push that or trying to always get leaner, we're not going to be able to do that. When we're eating at maintenance calories, we can train harder and we can recover better, right? And this is going to set the stage for physique improvements. And this comes back to building muscle, right? So you're going to be able to push your training harder if we are at maintenance calories. Now, this not to say that if you get to your surplus that you can't either, but you're going to be able to train. You're going to be able to train better. It's going to be more likely that you can train better when we're at maintenance calories because we're bringing in enough energy. Next, you can see performance gain. So if you have some sort of performance metric that you want to improve, or again, you like play an extra sport or something like that, like your best performance is going to be at maintenance, or again, you're eating enough food there, right? So again, if we're in a deficit, performance is likely going to be impacted at least a little bit compared to feeling enough. So if we feel enough, you're going to see better performance gains, which in turn, from a training perspective, that's going to help you with lean body mass. You're going to be able to build more muscle. But again, if you have any other performance goal, whether it's like an endurance goal or a strongman competition or whatever else you're doing, like you're going to be in the best position to perform when we're feeling enough. You can solidify habits without the stress of being in a deficit. So you can dial in habits that are going to help you in future fat loss phases and to maintain your progress long term as well too, right? And to continue to see more progress here. And so we can solidify our habits here because you feel good, you feel your best. We're optimizing our metabolism, you're building more muscle, and these are all going to be things that are going to help set you up for better fat loss dieting in the future and just maintaining your physique and improving your physique and maintaining your health and improving your health as well too. And then you just feel and function at your best here when we're feeling enough and we're not feeling too much either over extended periods of time. Again, there's probably a short period of time where if you overfeeling, again, a calorie surplus with the goal of building muscle, you may perform a little bit better. But again, we're looking at specifically feeling enough, right? But also, again, cognitively, you're gonna feel your best. Hormonally, you're gonna feel your best, which in turn is gonna mean you're just going to feel good overall. We already talked about thyroid's gonna be in a much better spot from an immune health perspective. This is gonna put you in the best position, especially for pairing it with good quality nutrition. And then again, physically, you're just gonna feel good. You're gonna be able to perform better. You're gonna be able to do everything from day to day much better when we're feeling enough. And from a nutrition perspective, like you're gonna be less hungry. If we're fueling with at least a solid base, let's say 80-20 of quote unquote health foods versus 20% maybe more on processed, tasty type foods, you're going to be feeling like your hunger is going to be lower. Cravings are going to be lower. So again, those are all good things as well too there. You may see the scale trend up slowly from muscle growth, water, and glycogen. So because we're eating a little bit more food than we were in a deficit, you're hopefully building some muscle because our inputs are in check. You may see your scale weight trend up slowly over time. So I already talked about that, right? We can't expect you to just stay at 154.2 the entire time. You may see it shift up to 155 to 160, right? Something like that. But again, if we're doing things right, we're not going to be gaining body fat in that process. So again, it comes back to your inputs are super important here. You can look better over time, even if the changes are slower in a cut, right? So you can, if you're adding lean body mass, like you can look better over time by doing that, right? Because you're going to have more muscle on your frame, which in turn is going to help with your physique. Plus, if you're feeling enough and you're feeling better, your body just feels much better when it's getting enough food. That may show up and like you just aesthetically just look better than you would like when you're in deficit, right? Because when you're in deficit, you may find that you're just a little bit more lethargic. Maybe you're like you just look like you're a little bit more tired. Whereas when we're well fueled, we're not going to have that, and so everything may just look and feel like you just look like you have more energy and everything like that. You may improve your body comp without scale loss, especially if you came from under eating. So if you're someone who chronically has been under eating and eating low calorie because you want to continue to see your scale weight go down, or you're trying to maintain your absolute lowest weight, you may find that once you get to your maintenance calories, you're eating enough and you're able to do all these things that we talked about. And again, from the aesthetic standpoint that I just talked about, like you just look like you have more energy, you may find that you look better from a body comp standpoint when you come from that under eating. And we can set the stage for more effective fat loss later, again, by improving hormone function, recovery, and training quality if we do it right. So it's also going to set us up for success later on. So for these reasons, I often use maintenance calories with clients during their building phase. Okay, so again, if we're outside of a fat loss, to me, that's a building phase. And if we can nail getting you to feel enough, we're focusing on our inputs. This is a building phase, right? Or maybe they just need a strategic shift away from fat loss without halting progress. So again, I use maintenance calories all the time. Maintenance isn't where progress stops. It's where a different kind of progress begins. Okay. So we need to start thinking about it from that standpoint there. So I will say most of the time we're going to be around where our maintenance calories are at. Unless again, you fall within that, hey, you have really high levels of body fat. We need to bring you down. We may spend a little bit more time in a deficit, but we're still going to strategically shift away from fat loss at times to make sure that you can continue to do that. The other time we wouldn't use maintenance calories is outside of a fat loss phase is if someone is super lean and they do need to gain a little bit of weight. But that doesn't mean we would always be pushing scale weight up. We may push it up to a certain level where you start to feel good, all these things, and then we push you to maintenance calories, right? But now let's talk about what cannot happen at maintenance. You're not going to lose body fat. So this means that visible changes are going to be much slower than they would be if you were actively dropping body fat, because body fat's going to be that kind of quick way to see progress in terms of your look. Now, where you run into issues is if you don't have good methods in fat loss, you try to stay there forever. That's where people run into issues of, okay, so I've been trying to fat loss diet. I'm not seeing big changes. One, your methods might not be there. You might not be adherent, or you've just been doing it for too long and you need to do this because this is going to set you up to see better progress later on. But you're not going to see body fat loss here. There's this myth that people think that you're going to lose body fat at maintenance calories. Oh, you can lose at maintenance. You can't, because you're bringing in enough food. Your body isn't going to be like, hey, we need to take body fat away, right? Like you need to be in a deficit for that. You're not going to see dramatic scale shifts or drastic physique updates week to week. So you're not going to see these massive changes from week to week. So we have to nail that in our head, right? It's going to be much slower for, again, the reasons that I talked about. One, muscle growth is super slow. And then two, we're not going to be actively losing body fat, which is going to be that kind of, to me, that's like that nitro boost, like that you can use for your car to make it go super quick. That's what fat loss is for your physique. But again, we run into issues, right? If you're always trying to press that button there to get that kind of bonus speed, you're going to run out and you can't do anything, right? So the same thing would happen here with if we're always trying to use fat loss for that. Again, you're not going to get shredded. But again, that's not the point of this phase. So you can't expect to get shredded at this point. Again, you need to fat loss diet, but we have to be strategic about when we fat loss diet. And if you're lean and already have a decent amount of muscle, you're not going to build a massive amount of muscle. But as we talked about, you could build a little bit, but everything else can still potentially happen, right? You can still build up your metabolism, right? You can still optimize your metabolism. You can train harder. You can see a ton of performance gains. You can solidify habits. You can start to feel better hormonally, cognitively, physically, right? But you may not build a lot of muscle. So again, this is where if we decide we're going to be at maintenance calories, we just have to figure out, is that going to put you in the best position to build muscle? Maybe we're not trying to do a building phase to build muscle. Maybe it's to do those other things, right? So this is where we can be it's very context dependent in terms of what kind of goals we're going to be shooting for in your building phase, right? A building phase doesn't always have to be, I'm going to make a podcast on this next week. A building phase doesn't always have to be you're gaining muscle, right? And that is one thing that we do try to shoot for most of the time, and we want to try to do that, but there may be cases where that's not the main goal, and so we need to focus on other things. So even if you are someone that's on the leaner side and you can't necessarily build muscle maintenance, you may find that you need to use maintenance calories for other reasons. And again, we figure that out. So just to sum this up, maintenance calories does not equal standing still. Maintenance calories equals for forward movement if done. It's just different from getting shredded or leaning out. You're not meant to be in fat loss mode year round. So again, if your only definition of progress is fat loss, big changes on the scale, weekly physique updates, you're going to be missing the bigger picture here. And you're not going to be, again, you're going to run into issues and you're going to find that you're spinning your wheels. This is where people get into that state of, hey, I'm working hard, I'm not seeing the change. And again, it's because they're always like trying to drop body fat. They don't want to ever increase their calories because they're scared of seeing their scale weight come up 1 to 2 pounds, or they think that they need to gain a ton of weight to build muscle. And again, that's not the case. I just explained what we can do here at maintenance. And a lot of people just think the only way progress happens is during a fat loss phase and in a fat loss phase, but that's short-term thinking. So we need to think bigger picture here. So hopefully that helps you get a better idea of what maintenance calories is, what we can expect, what we can't expect, and then why we would use it and why I feel like it is a good place to be. You could literally be there all year long. It just depends on your body composition, but we probably want to default here most of the time. And then we want to use our deficits and our surpluses under certain situations, but we also want to set them up correctly here. To me, maintenance is a great safe place to be like, hey, you're going to be moving forward if we focus on our inputs, but we need to step away from seeing big changes on the scale, weekly physique updates, and fat loss, right? So hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. If you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, that'll help more people find it. And if you haven't followed me on Instagram yet, and Jeff, HOEHN_, that's where I'm most active on social media. That's it for me. I'll talk to you guys next time.